Jeff, thank you so much for joining me. This is Charlie with the Renovating Retirement Podcast, and we're talking about police officers or first responders, or imagine firemen fall in that category, kind of that paramedic fireman world.
Absolutely. Yeah, they all fall in that category.
What's the unique challenges that people from this profession have when they go towards retirement? Every profession is different, but one of the ones that we've discovered over 17 years of kind of studying mortgage planning, estate planning, retirement planning, insurance planning, and tax planning, the big one, is that's a category of professional that tends to end up with a pension. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And pensions are awesome, and pensions cause problems. What do I mean by that? Pensions are awesome because if somebody called me up and said, would you like me to send you $4,000 a month for the rest of your life? I'd go, yes, I would. Thank you very much. And I'd sign up. And if the IRS said, well, we get $1,200 of that, I'd be like, thank you for the $2,800 that I get to keep, because it's just surprise. It's just extra money, right?
That's right.
But the reality is, when you're planning for retirement, and especially when you're trying to get into a 0% tax bracket or keep as much as you can during retirement, the pension is a source of income that we can't eliminate the taxes on. First problem. But like I just said, pensions are wonderful. So paying taxes, most people are like, no problem. I understand that. The problem is that pension income raises something called provisional income, which even when we interview CPAs and ask them to describe provisional income, they generally can't. So as a consumer or a cop or a fireman or whatever, you're probably not going to know what it is. But it raises something called provisional income, which means now the IRS can tax your Social Security income. So here they took it out of your paycheck, and now they're giving you your own money back, and they can keep some of it by taxing it. That's no bueno, man. We don't like that, right? So let's talk a little bit about, how many people? Is it every police officer, or do you have to work a certain amount of years, or who gets this pension?
It depends. I'm from Oklahoma, and so I know mostly about the Oklahoma pension system, and it can be done in a couple of different ways. Ultimately, if you want to get a pension at all, you have to stay 10 years, at which time we call that being vested.
Okay.
You can't leave after the 10 years and get it right then, but you can get a certain percentage of it at 53, I believe it is.
Okay.
Now, if you stay for 20, then you get a certain percentage. In Oklahoma, at 20 years, it's going to be 50% of the highest 30 out of your last 60 months. And you get it right then for the rest of your life. When you die, your spouse gets it for the rest of their lives.
So it has that survivor benefit built right in. That's nice.
It does.
So if your highest 30 was like $100,000 a year, you can retire like right away at $50,000 a year, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Now, I didn't let you give yourself an intro, but the people watching are going to probably want to know, like, who's this joker? Like, what did he do so tell me about your career and kind of where you came from and what rank you had, or they call it rank, or what position you had?
Yeah. So back in 94, I graduated from college in 93. I started looking into being in law enforcement. I applied with the agency that I ended up with in Norman, Oklahoma, and didn't get hired. Made it down to the final 30 out of a 12-person academy. Had some friends that were already on the force there, and they said, you may want to go join the military for a few years because that looks really good with our agency.
Wow.
So spend a little bit of time in the military and come back and apply again, and you have a really good chance of getting hired. So I did.
You experienced rejection before you even started your own business.
I absolutely did. Yeah.
Nice. So then how long were you with that department?
I was with the department that I retired from for a little over 20 years.
Wowzers. Same town, everything, same. Did you get to know all the bad guys and the speeders and the drug dealers?
You certainly did, very quickly. Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Your target market, right?
Yeah. I spent about 10 years total on midnight shift, which is where most of that type of action occurs. So I knew a lot of people very, very well that probably didn't want to know me very well.
Here he comes again. Here he comes. Right. Yeah. That's something. So you retired, and I would imagine, like a lot of people, you have some life left in you, and here you are in this career, retirement services. Maybe real quick before we continue talking about the specifics, what made you choose financial services for your next career?
It's kind of crazy. I I decided about a year and a half before I retired that I was going to go ahead and pull the plug at that point whenever I could. My wife and I decided that we wanted to do some traveling. Like you said, had a lot of life left in us.
Yeah.
So I started looking at what my options were in my retirement planning as far as income were concerned.
Yep.
I knew that I was going to be getting that pension. I knew gross what that was going to be per month, but I had some money in deferred comp that I'd been putting away. I had an account with ICMA and I had an account with Nationwide. Both of those were tax deferred accounts.
Okay.
So I started making some phone calls trying to figure out what I should do with that money. What I found out was they didn't know. They didn't really have any good answers for me.
Right.
I think what bothered me the most about it was I learned that the advisors with those particular companies that I was with, they showed up about once every 6 months. Well, let me go back. One of them showed up about every 6 months.
Yeah.
Asked if we wanted to look at our accounts, asked if we wanted to change anything. If we did, we filled out a form with him. We changed how much we were putting in, or we moved it around to a different aggressive or moderate, if depending on how things were going. The other one, I probably didn't see him for the last 8 years of my career.
Wow.
I had to call that company directly if I wanted to talk to them and get me information.
Right. Yep. Not great service. They're not really service, organizations. Yep.
No, but they were certainly taking their 1.5% out of there every year.
Right.
Yeah. So once I started making those phone calls and trying to figure out exactly how I was going to allot that into my stream of income, and I didn't get any answers, I started looking elsewhere.
Right.
And I happened to run across Rob Hodges just by chance. Made contact with him, started having conversations with him, and he actually had answers. He had a lot. Yeah. He had a lot of answers.
And most people aren't going to know that name, right? That are watching this, and I didn't either. Now you can go search me, Charlie Jewett, CharlieJewett, and go, who's this guy? And I had reached a point in my career where I'm like, nobody can beat me. I'd even say it on my podcast. I had called the Cowards Challenge. I'm like, if you think you can beat one of my retirement plans, come on the show and challenge me. Because if you do beat me, that'll be good news. I'll learn something and all my listeners will do better. People wouldn't know unless we told them. The only person in the country who's ever improved upon one of my retirement plans is Rob Hodges. And as promised, I made him a part of my life right away. And now you can actually hear him on the podcast. You bumped into him as well. And in the planning world of retirement, if you're going to have a pension, which is good news, it creates a problem. We want to go back and solve that problem because retirement means income replacement. Like the whole idea of retirement planning is save a little bit of your money every month and build up a big giant chunk of it. So when you retire, you can take a little bit every month. So it's streams turned into chunks, turned into streams of income. It's all income planning. That's what retirement planning is. In our country, big companies like Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley that are growth-based often have the money, Fidelity, Schwab, things like that, but they're not retirement planning companies. They're not income planners. They'll keep your money. They'll let you take an income from it, but leaving your money in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds while taking an income for 30 or 40 years is desperately dangerous. It doesn't work out. We have all the evidence we can show everybody. There's frankly better tools that have more safety, last longer, and give you 2 or 3 times the income. So there's really no reason to leave it in the market anyway. But what people may want to do, Jeff, is work with an income planner like you and say, well, what should I be doing? If I know I'm going to get a pension and it could trigger this tax on Social Security, how do I prepare ahead of time with the rest of my assets to avoid, and that's our specialty, is 0% tax bracket or the power of zero, being in a 0% tax bracket by the time you retire or within the first 10 years of retirement. How do you keep as much of that in? It's cool to make $10,000 a month, but not if the IRS is taking $3,200 of it. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is.
So we asked
it's cool to get that check every month for sure. But
isn't it fun? I don't know anybody that hates regular income.
Hitting the first of the year like we are right now, it really scares you a little bit going into that tax advisor's office and thinking, man, if I didn't plan correctly, how much money am I going to have to give the government out of that money that I received every month?
Right. Right. So if somebody's already retired, they were a paramedic, they were in the fire department, they were a police officer, we can help that person for sure. We want to restructure things. It might be perfect, by the way. A lot of times I tell people it's called the good news or good news review. Let's look at what you're doing. And if it's perfect, I'm going to pat you on the back and you're going to be stoked and sleep really well at night, knowing there's nothing better you could do. But usually it's a different form of good news we're delivering, which is with all of our expertise studying mortgage planning, estate planning, retirement planning, insurance planning, and tax planning, where most professionals just study one of them. Normally, we find an area where we can make an improvement, lower the fees, raise the income, lower the taxes, add money for going to nursing homes at no cost. We can do all that on a budget neutral playing field, which most people don't know. If I said, let me come remodel your kitchen for free, give you all the latest and greatest appliances, travertine tile, granite countertops, like I'll look at what you have. If there's anything newer and better, you get it. And you don't have to pay me because there's a reality TV show that's going to pay me, for the before and after. If I, in that funny little scenario, could remodel people's kitchens for free, most of them would be like, do it, or your man cave or whatever, right?
Right.
Crazy industry that we're in, financial services, that's actually how it works. We actually look at what people have, what they're doing, and can say, this is the latest, greatest, best. Or did you know you could do it this way and get twice the results? And they go, I didn't know that. How much do I have to pay? Nothing. It's just, You're putting $1,000 a month here, do it here instead. Or you have 500,000 sitting over here, move it over here. It's always, your net worth never changes. We cost less than a Happy Meal, right? Yeah, you pay for a Happy Meal, your net worth goes down by $5.50 or whatever it is, right? So let me give a little flavor of what people may want to do differently to be in a 0% tax bracket. Maybe you're funding your defined benefit plan or your 457, your 403B, your IRAs, your 401ks. Maybe you're stuffing a bunch of money, right? Getting a tax deduction and postponing taxes till later because your CPA told you to, or because it's traditional, or because you thought you should, or whatever, right? We find when we ask people, do you think taxes are going to go up or down? Most of them say up. My team, all the best advisors I can find in the country, including yourself, turn around and say, well, if you think taxes are going to be up higher later, because country can't afford Social Security, country can't afford Medicare, couldn't afford the Wall Street bailout, can't afford this coronavirus bailout, right? If we're going backwards and in debt and can't afford to pay our the promises we've made already, the only way the country has to raise money is tax revenue. We believe taxes are going to go up.
That's right.
Why should you postpone taxes to a later date when they're going to be higher? Also, what tax bracket, like they're going to charge more for the brackets, but what tax bracket will you be in if you want the same lifestyle you have today, when inflation means you have to have 50 to 100% more income 20 years from now or something? So most people, when asked some simple questions, go, no, I want to be in the same or higher tax bracket. And I do believe the IRS is going to have to charge us more to cover everything. And then they get this epiphany. Hold on. So you're telling me I shouldn't be putting, $17,000 a year into my 401k and taking the deduction today and paying the taxes later? And they have kind of a big aha, which afterwards they're like, well, that's obvious. Why do I want to save taxes on 17 grand at low rates and pay taxes on $50,000 I take out for income at high rates? Higher taxes on a bigger number or lower taxes on a smaller number. When people study it, you've seen this, right? They kind of go, have you had that experience now?
Well, it's one of the epiphanies that I had, and I'll tell you why. And this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about first responder type work and the employees, the government work that we do. There are a lot of places where that's all they offer. All they offer is a payroll deduction from that's tax deferred with only approved companies that they allow to do that with them.
Right.
So I only had two choices. I only had ICMA and Nationwide that I could even do a payroll deduction with in order to tax defer money. Now, that being said, I didn't do the homework that I should have done to figure out that I could go do something else with my money and maybe not even use a tax deferred account, maybe use a private reserve account, maybe keep that money tax free in retirement.
Yeah.
And I would have been better served. But, I went with what they had to offer. And then there was my epiphany upon retirement. that, oh my gosh, when I take this money out, I got to pay all these taxes on it too.
Right. Which is funny because people, what do you hope happens with your accounts? If you're putting money into 401ks, IRAs, or any account, what are you hoping happens? You're hoping they explode and they grow 100 times. If your account was 100 times bigger, would you really want to share it with the IRS at whatever percentage they can pass through Congress? It's like having a business partner where they tell you, I'll tell you how much of the company I own in 30 years. Right?
Right. Right.
Weird arrangement. So when we talk to people and they say, well, what makes you different than other people? We're going to go much more comprehensive, and we're going to come at it from a different angle, which is it's not only growth, like what's my rate of return? If you were to pick one thing, and it's not really, I'm not suggesting you pick one thing, but if you had to pick one thing, it's probably not growth. It would probably be net income. Which strategy lets me keep as many dollars per month from retirement to death compared to the others? And if you can do that with less risk and lower fees, even more of a winner. So some people that talk with us are going to say, I don't think I should send my contributions pre-tax over there. I think I might send them somewhere else, and say, where do you suggest I send them?
Yeah.
The other thing is they may have already done that. I mean, I met somebody recently with $1.4 million in a 401k and 20,000 in the bank. And that was that was all their assets. Like very exaggerated, like way too much pre-tax and almost nothing in the bank, as opposed to other people have like a little in Roth, a little over here, a little over here. So if you have, here's a good rule of thumb. If you have more than like $300,000 or $400,000 in an IRA or a 401k, something that hasn't been taxed yet, and you have more than $300,000 or $400,000 in there, we may also want to start looking at how do you convert before retirement or in the early years? How do you take advantage? Like for instance, if you have income and then you start to retire and you have no income, sometimes we can take income from sources for those first 5 years where you have zero tax on the first 24,000 and change, and then 10% tax on the next 10. We can keep you in a very low tax bracket and say, well, let's spend this money down and live in the low tax bracket and let your tax-free stuff grow. Because by the way, if you're going to have something turn into 100 times more money, the example I used before, you want it to be where it's tax-free, a Roth IRA or a cash value life insurance policy built a specific way or whatever. You want it to be an area where, in a place where you're not sharing it with anybody if you're going to hit some home runs, right?
Absolutely.
If I started Facebook, I wouldn't want to partner either. You know, I want all of it, keep it for myself. And that's actually a funny thing, because I was sitting here thinking, I'll bet you, police don't get stock options, right? Like that's not even a thing. Like if you're in public service of any time or a first responder, by definition, you might have a pension, but you don't ever have that. Like you might hit it big because you worked at Google or Microsoft or Facebook, right? That's not even a reality.
That's not a thing. I don't think the community would be okay with that.
I know, right? Like I own a piece of the police department. I own 11% of it, right?
I got stock options for all the arrests that I made.
Yeah, exactly. And now I can imagine as a police officer, I would think all first responders would have seen the same thing. You guys might understand the need for life insurance to be a part of a financial plan better than other professions. I don't see people die. I don't see people lose family members to gang violence or break-ins or fire, right? I don't see people have heart attacks in their 40s. But those professions, though I'm sure a lot of calls are like, I don't know, the equivalent of the cat in the tree, or like somebody has a headache, you're just sort of like checking, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Oh, you're really shooting at each other. Here's a real one,
Yeah.
But I think you probably see more than the rest of us. Stuff happens, You
see some incredibly sad stories. I mean, almost on a weekly basis as a patrol officer, for sure. I can't even begin to tell you some of the things that I responded to that when I went home later, I thought to myself, man, I feel so bad for that entire family right now. It was just, and they would open up to you right there, whenever it's going on, and tell you the situation that they're in. And we're talking dire situations that just really, really made you sad for them.
Well, let's wrap it up like this, with that as an understanding. If you're still working and a breadwinner passes away or an income earner passes away, or even when you're in retirement and somebody passes away sooner than expected, one of the social securities goes away. So if you're each making $2,500 a month, you lose one of them. You're better off if one of you makes 4,000, the other makes 500, because the remaining spouse keeps the 4,000, but you don't get to choose that. That's your Social Security. So you lose one of the incomes, and then you also you pay higher taxes. 2 years of being a widow, and then you're going to be single, and at some point in there, tax laws change all the time. But you're not married filing jointly for very long after your spouse passes away. So how do we address that? What makes it different? The system that you and I are working in, a much more thorough financial plan, not risk with a side of fees, and I hope it works out. Just put all your money in mutual funds or the stock market. It's much more comprehensive. And with the mortgage plan, estate plan, retirement plan, insurance plan, and tax plan as one of our ways of being comprehensive, the other one is we don't know what's going to happen in your family. So let's plan for all 5 lives of retirement: long life, short life, rough life, sick life, and into the next life. A real financial and retirement plan says, I don't know what's going to happen, but no matter what happens, your family's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Whoever's still alive is going to be okay. There is no gambling. It is the spare tire in the car where I pay extra gas, and sometimes I need it, that dumb little donut, right? So anything else that you'd want to say to police officers, first responders, people kind of in that public servant world that have a pension and maybe followed what their parents did or the traditional advice, right? That now we've realized, that may not work so well going forward. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I got a couple of things, Charlie. One is, I don't know how prominent this is in other states. I know that they do have it in other states, but in particular in Oklahoma, we have what's called a drop back plan, or a drop back as a portion of our plan with our deferred comp. And the way it works is, let's say I hit 20 and I've done my time, and I could punch out if I want to, or I can stay and do additional years. I can do as many as I want to, up to, 35, 36 years or whatever.
Right.
And then I choose the drop back from my pension system.
Okay.
When I do that, they roll my time back to 5 years previous, and whatever the highest 30 out of my 60 months were at that point, that's what I get for my defined benefit pension in my bank account monthly.
Okay.
They take the rest of that and they see what the market did during that 5-year period, and they give you that money in a lump sum. And that can result anywhere from, depending on your rank and how much money you were making, it can be anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 or $600,000.
Wow.
In a lump sum.
Wow.
Now, what do you do with that? Like, where do you put it? Like, right. I mean, how is that going to affect you in retirement? How's that going to affect your taxes? And those answers are individual to each person, right, depending on how many years they stayed after 20, how many years they're dropping back, what that lump sum is going to be, and how much money they already have in that tax deferred bucket. And nobody talks about that. And matter of fact, none of the financial advisors with the acronym companies really even know anything other than, yeah, you can roll it right over from the pension system to your tax deferred account with us. Here's the paperwork.
Right.
But we need to be thinking about that. And a lot of people, they plan for that. They say, I know I'm staying 25. I know I'm staying 30, and I'm doing the 5-year drop back. And they already have it calculated what that lump sum number is going to be. But they don't know necessarily what the right thing is to do with it. And that's something that a lot of them need help with. And because we do that comprehensive overview of their entire financial, portfolio, we can help them with that.
Well said. Very well said. That's a very unique, specific situation that these people end up in that has a tax decision that you're right. The company where the money is right now is not going to give you advice on this. If you go to the brand name companies, Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, Schwab, they're not going to give you advice on this. You'd have to bump into somebody purposely doing it differently, providing the tax planning along with the retirement and investment planning. Where to invest the money, where to grow it, one choice. Whether to leave it as a pre-tax, tax-deferred account, or do Roth conversions, or take strategic distributions and put it into a PRA, another decision altogether. Chances are somebody who loves you very much or cares about you or even just met you and thought you were cool told you to watch this video because you're in some sort of public service, or you were, or you're receiving a pension, or maybe you're in the military. If you're getting a military pension, it's quite similar from a tax standpoint. And if that's the case, reach back out to them and just say, oh my goodness, it was a little long. Charlie talks forever, but I watched it. I made it through and I learned something. What do you suggest? That person that shared the video with you either is a rock star 3rd degree black belt retirement planner or is partnered with one of them, because nobody in our group is allowed to practice on anybody else's retirement plan. There's always that vetted expert there providing quality control, working with people for as many years as it takes. So reach back out to the person that gave you this video and let's get this right. Let's get you in a 0% tax bracket, even if it means we look at everything and go, you're perfect. I wouldn't change anything. Let's talk next year, and keep it dynamically up to date. But the reality is the probabilities are so high, Jeff, that when we meet people, there's some budget neutral advice we can give them right now where life gets better instantly. Retire sooner, retire better, and don't spend more. Just optimize those assets. So thank you so much for helping me kind of talk about this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Charlie. I appreciate it.